Good day. Will we ever regain the voluntary spirit in Jamaica? Does it take a certain motivation to have this voluntary spirit that is needed to build our nation way past where we have already reached? Today, I intertwine a short history of volunteerism in Jamaica with aspects of my own biography. Has the internet so distracted our young people that we will never again have the voluntary spirit to lift our nation in ways that we need it? Today is 40 years, April 7. Today is 40 years since I began a job at CVSS, Council for Voluntary Social Services, that lasted only 6 months. All social work organizations require private funding, and sometimes the funding is plenty, sometimes the funding is not. Indeed, I was a victim of that same problem twice in my career as a social worker between 1972 and 1985. So after 6 months as a youth officer, they just did not have the money to continue my employment. So that was the end of that. Yes, on 3 occasions between 1972 and 1985, I made attempts to become a Catholic priest, and 3 times I did not succeed and therefore had to leave and find work. But that is another story. Suffice it to say that I have not changed my mind. I never changed my mind, and I am still available if the Lord calls me to be a priest, even at this late stage of my life. Today, I want to tell you that 50 years ago, I was employed at Social Development Commission. 45 years ago, I was employed at the adult literacy program called JAMAL, an acronym for Jamaican Movement for the Advancement of Literacy Limited. 43 years ago, I was employed at Community Economic Organization, a public sector company that promoted community cooperatives. 40 years ago, I was employed to CVSS, as I indicated. And 38 years ago, I was employed as superintendent of an orphanage, the Vidal Home for Boys. All of this because every time I went in and went out, I had to find another job. And sometimes, like what happened at CVSS, I just had to move on. At both CVSS and the Vidal Home for Boys, which was owned and operated by the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Kingston, my employment was stopped as there was no money to pay me. And to add to this problem, there were not enough volunteers coming forward. It appears that people do not volunteer for anything unless it is for a cause that motivates them. And even then, the cause is best motivated by a charismatic person at the helm. In the 1930s, the fight for self-government began with the National Reform Association of 1935, that met literally in hiding at the Gleaner Company, then located at Harbour Street in Kingston. The idea of self-government was a radical and revolutionary one in the 1930s, and the owners of the Gleaner were sugar estate owners who probably were sorry that Jamaica was not still in slavery, as in the days before 1838. There were young people ready and willing to dedicate themselves to that cause. So when Jamaica Welfare was established in 1937 by Norman Washington Manley to improve the rural areas so that the banana workers would return from the cities to the banana estates, again because of the ferment in the country, fighting for self-government, there were people who readily came forward as volunteers. The same was true of the credit unions in the early days when the Roman Catholic Church established the credit union movement in Jamaica, starting in 1941. By 1942, the Roman Catholic Church established the Jamaica Cooperative Credit Union League. Also in 1942, the Council for Voluntary Social Services was established mainly among Protestant groups of men and women, such as the Brotherhood of St. Andrew in the Anglican Church, the East Queen Street Baptist Men's Fellowship, and the Upward and Onward Society of the Moravian Women, among others. Actually, the East Queen Street Baptist Men's Fraternal, that's what it was called, also had a group that became Frat Quintet and sang Jamaican folk songs. And there were other groups like the Girl Guides, the Scouts and the Girl Guides, as well as Boys and Girls Brigades that operate out of churches. Yes, there have been Roman Catholic Boys and Girls Brigades, but very few and very far between. I know that the late Father Kenneth Ramsey had Boys and Girls Brigades in Port Antonio when he was pastor of St. Anthony's Church. But I wonder if that was because Father Ramsey was a convert to the Roman Catholic Church and still had some of the Moravian culture in him. But it was in seeing these uniform groups that were attached to Protestant churches that I asked the question, where were the uniform groups in the Roman Catholic Church? Yes, there was a time when the St. Vincent de Paul Society, the Legion of Mary, etc. wore uniforms. But where were they for young people? I had heard about Catholic Scouts. I recall as a young man Peter Espute, now Deacon Peter Espute, showing me the manual for Catholic Scouts as his parents were in charge of that program in the Archdiocese. I was determined to start a uniform group for Catholic students in non-Catholic schools, as in 1981 it occurred to me that this would be my lifetime ministry in the church. I made quite a few attempts at starting such a group from 1982, beginning with the altar servers at St. Richard's Church, Red Hills Road. Then I started a newsletter called The Fisherman in 1985, and then I directed camps for 27 years between 1992 and 2019. Literally from 1992 to COVID. And yet the uniform group has still not started, but I have not given up. Today we still need volunteers. What would volunteers do today? That would be the subject of another commentary at another time. Have a good day.